Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the Grey. Today we have a getting started with video for you, and today we're going to be focusing on the Soulblight Gravelords, and in particular their sub-faction, the Legion of Blood. So let's talk a little bit about the Legion of Blood. For starters, as mentioned, they're a Soulblight Gravelords sub-faction. So this means they're going to get access to all the generic rules we get with Soulblight Gravelords. This is grave sights, the ability to bring units back, some bravery penalties, and all that, stuff we get for being Soulblight Gravelords as standard. In addition though, we're going to get some additional rules for the sub-faction Legion of Blood. Now, a lot of these sub-faction rules focus on vampires and their retainers. What this means is sort of the vampires give buffs out to death rattle units around them. In particular, just death rattle. They don't really give a lot of checks out to other things in the force. They mostly focus on death rattle. So, for starters, if an enemy unit fails a battleship test within 3 inches of any Legion of Blood vampire units, you add D3 to the number of models that flee. This can be really good on really elite armies. Now, it's worth mentioning that actually a couple of armies up the top tier of the meta as well at the moment are actually quite low bravery, and you wouldn't expect them to be. Things like Lumineth and Caradron Overlords have really low bravery, and they get even lower when they use things like their Aether Quartz Reserves or their Aether Gold Shares, where they actually lower their bravery to be able to use these abilities. So having some bravery debuffs in your army, just as, a little off chance that it might happen, is actually worth doing. We then have the rule Favoured Retainers, and this is the primary rule we get for being Legion of Blood. So you ignore negative modifiers to hit and wound for rolls from melee weapons by friendly Legion of Blood death rattle units whilst they hold within 12 inch of Legion of Blood vampire units, or 18 inch of a vampire hero that is your general. Now, a big thing with Legion of Blood is this is the home of one of our Mortarchs. This is the home of Neferata, the Mortarch of Blood, hence the name Legion of Blood. This is her particular legion that she leads across the mortal realms. So she is a primary focus, I feel, when we're looking at creating an army for this faction. You're going to want to have her in there just because she is that figurehead for the faction. And this is something Soulblight Gravelords in general do really well. They're the only book to date that has a named character in every single sub-faction. This is great, because not only could you just ignore Neferata and choose your own Legion of Blood army, but it does give the Legion of Blood a sense of place within the world, as you've got this character figurehead to focus your lore and story upon, and you can build your own character stories around that. Anyway, let's get looking at how we can start off building a Legion of Blood force. So, where to start? So I think a great place to start, Legion of Blood, as I mentioned, this is Neferata, the Mortarch of Blood's particular sub-faction, and what's great is she's a named character that doesn't cost all too many points, so she could actually be one of the first models you grab for this particular sub-faction. There are, of course, other ways if you're not particularly fond of including Neferata in your starting force. Maybe look at another big monster character, something like a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, or one of the Vengorian Lords. Or you could choose to go something smaller and just pick a regular Vampire Lord on foot. All of these are great options, but for the purpose of this video, I really think Neferata is the heart and soul of this sub-faction, so we're going to be starting with her. Alongside her, we're going to have some Skeleton Warriors because they're good retainers. They're a good defensive unit that can sit on the table and just absorb your opponent's hits and then strike back after they regrow some models. And then Black Knights. Neferata's Legion of Blood makes these models battle line, so with that in mind, they become a good unit to have going around your flank, sort of capping objectives that you might otherwise not be able to get to, or don't have time to send your faster units like Neferata off onto, because you want her to be in the main fighting force, sort of buffing up your big units of skeletons and Graveguard in the force, which we'll get onto in a sec. So this is a great little starting point. Black Knights necessarily aren't the best unit in Soulblight Gravelords, but they do fill a purpose here because they're going to be getting the buffs off of the vampires in our force. Alright, but after that, where do we go to next with this Soulblight Gravelords force? Well, for starters, I mentioned it before, but Vampire Lords are a great addition to this. Having these little heroes spotted throughout your army are a great way to just ensure you're always going to have access to these buffs to not be taking any negatives to hit on your Skeleton Warrior or Graveguard or Black Knight units. None of your Death Rattle are going to be worrying about those negative modifiers. So, Foot Vampires are great for this, and even a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon are all good pieces to have around the table, just enabling you to ignore those particular debuffs across your army. Speaking of them, I mentioned them before, Graveguard are a fantastic unit, and they really are going to be the biggest hammer in your Legion of Blood force. Death Rider units get some good buffs, and Graveguard are a really good unit. Their halberds are damage 2, which is really nice, and they also do mortal wounds as well when they get some 6s in there, so they can do not only good damage with damage 2 weapons, but actually do some mortal wounds in there as well on a quite reliable basis. They're going to have a lot of attacks. They're on 25mm bases. This is just going to allow them to get a lot of hits in and get it in there a lot of the time. Next up, a White King. This is another good unit and good character to have. Now, unlike the Vampire Lord, he's not going to provide the buffs of the ignore negative modifiers like the Vampire Lord does, but he's going to give you some reroll access that you might not get otherwise. Also, worth mentioning at this point as well, the Start Collecting Soulblight Gravelords, which contains a White King on Skeletal Steed, 20 Graveguard, and some Black Knights, is a great piece to add to this force. It's going to give you that White King, it's going to give you some Graveguard, which you need, and it's going to give you some Black Knights as well, all of which are good pieces to have within your Legion of Blood force. Lastly, we're going to look at the Necromancer. Now, he sort of falls outside of the main force. I mean, he's not a vampire and he's not a Death Rider unit. But however, his spell is really cool. He's going to allow you to sort of double pile in and attack with some of your pieces here using his Van Hell's Dance Macabre spell, which is a really fun spell you can use, and it works on any of the summonable units you have available to you. So what this one does is effectively you can pick one friendly Soulblight Gravelords summonable unit, as mentioned, that is Skeleton Warriors, Graveguard, and actually your Black Knights as well. And if the unit has 4 only once in that combat phase, when it's your turn to pick a unit to fight, they can be picked again for a second time if they're within 3 inch of enemy units. So this can mean you can really turn those Graveguard up. They can hit a screen, destroy the screen, and then pile in and attack the juicy meat behind them. So really cool to have a Necromancer in there, just give you access to some different sort of plays and tactics you can use within your force. Now that we've talked about all of this though, we're going to go look at a 1000-point sample army list just to get you started with the Soulblight Gravelords using Legion of Blood. And so here we have a cool little sample army list. Now, if you'd like to look at a particular different sample army list I've put together for Legion of Blood, you can do so by clicking on the link to our Start Collecting Soulblight Gravelords video. We should have a link somewhere up the top of the video, or it'll be at the end of the video. One of the two. Anyway, we've got that on the channel that you can go and look, and that'll have a very different non-Neferata build list at the end of that video, which you might find interesting for the Legion of Blood. However, we've gone with a Neferata build in this just because, once again, I feel the narrative just pushes me to want to include Neferata in this, but I have got, as mentioned, a video with a different build for Legion of Blood in it. Neferata, she's going to be our only character at our starting 1000 points, and she's going to be our general and have the spell Spirit Gale. Now, normally with these characters, I've been going with the choice of having Amethystine Pinions for the extra 6-inch move, but really, Neferata's not that keen to get in combat. While she can be cool to get in combat and trying to get, you know, the Dagger of Jet in and just stab something and get, hopefully, a lucky kill on a character is really awesome, she's not really a combat monster. So I've gone for Spirit Gale, where you roll 2d6 and you try and roll over your opponent's bravery. You're going to have some negative bravery debuffs in your army just from being Soulblight Gravelords, so that's cool. And Neferata, you know, she's got access to her own great spell, her mist spell, sort of, which gives her effectively the ethereal rule, meaning her armor save can't be negative, is really cool and can keep her in the fight for a lot longer than you think. Battle line, we've gone for a unit of 20 Death Rider skeletons and a unit of 5 Black Knights. Black Knights, as mentioned, will just be going around the edges of the force, just sort of picking up objectives. 5 models is cool for this, and while, yes, you do have access to Fellbats, 3 models fly, and that is a great alternative option, the battle line restrictions here, we're wanting the skeleton in one big unit so they don't die, so they can fight second and then attack, because we're going to want our Graveguard to be the first unit fighting to do the most damage, because we're not going to want them to suffer any casualties. Speaking of Graveguard, we do have 20 of them in the force, and they're going to be the heavy lifters of the force. So they're going to be going in, fighting where it's thickest and hardest, and hopefully striking first. Our Skeleton Warriors are going to be able to go in, fight second, because they're going to be able to regain models, and then hit as well, to hopefully clear out anything that is left that our Graveguard didn't kill. But if you're running Legion of Blood, I'd love to know what you're thinking about them, what you're thinking of doing. Neferata, how do you feel about her? Are you going to run her in your Legion of Blood armies, or potentially some other version of Soulblight Gravelords? Let us know in the comments below. Well, thank you all for watching the video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. While you're on YouTube as well, why not go check out my featured channel section where there's a bunch of other fantastic Warhammer Age of Sigmar content creators doing everything from battle reports, lore videos, painting videos, narrative games, tactical videos, and more besides that as well. And if you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of our little community here at Sinful Gaming, you can do so by following the link in the description of the video to our Discord server. Lastly though, we'd like to give a shout out to everyone who helps support the channel via Patreon and YouTube members. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Thank you to our patrons, Christian Weir, James Soren, Chaos Spawn, AJC, Kenny Lowell, Outer and Shot First, James Crowder, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, Tim Newman, The Rising Ape, The Q Dynamic, Augustin Andreas, Lopez Diaz, and Anthony B. And thank you to our YouTube members, Green Roots Gaming, Firetine, Steve T, and The Real Zeop. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. If you'd like to help support the channel like they do and help us keep putting out Warhammer Age of Sigmar content and Warhammer content in general, please do go subscribe to Patreon or YouTube members in the description of the video below. Thank you all for watching. Stay safe everyone, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the Grey. Ciao for now.